Hello, one and all. Um, so I am Imperator Kylock. Some of you might know me from the SM2 modding Discord. Some of you might know me from my Twitch. Some of you might not know me at all, and that's totally fine. Um, so today I'm going to be making a beginner's guide for SM2 modding, Space Marine 2. I figured the community's growing every day, and it's about time someone did a proper beginner's guide. So we're going to be talking about pretty much everything that I can think of that's at least on a surface level. Some stuff about um, how this compares in a second here to other modding for other games, and just take you the full process of making a very simple but properly made mod. Okay, so first thing is just in general, and if you've already modded other games, you probably know this. Modding is very tedious. It requires a lot of patience. It takes a lot of time, but it's super worth it. It's super rewarding. You can bring stuff to life that you made that doesn't exist already, right? Um, and so, although it's time consuming, I encourage anyone who is passionate about the game they play to try and get into it. If you love Warhammer, if you love Space Marine 2, why not play around with some files and make something really cool, right? So just in terms of, for those of you who've modded other games, the way this Space Marine 2 modding compares is our community is very new. So I mean, not very new, but it's not like decades old. So a lot of the stuff it's about middle of the road, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel entirely, but you will probably, as a Space Marine 2 modder, end up wanting to do things that quite simply have never been done before. So it requires a lot of being willing to experiment, being willing to try and figure things out before you even ask, right? Because there might not be an answer that anyone can give you, but that doesn't mean what you're trying to make isn't makeable, right? So just a little bit about me. Me and my team are responsible for the Custodes Overhaul mod for Space Marine 2. So that's where my base of knowledge comes from when talking about this stuff. But yeah, I encourage everyone to get into modding, and let's get into the basics of creating a mod. So first of all, I'm going to be posting alongside this guide a beginner bundle as of August 2025. These are the tools that modders use or should use to create mods for Space Marine 2. So the ones we're mainly going to be discussing today are the mod editor, right? There is some other stuff in here. The model converter for if you're trying to take out or put in 3D models. Index if you're trying to pull out 3D models that are already in the game. As well as some situational ones for more niche types of mods. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a mod using the mod editor. Okay, so first things first, you want to stay organized. I'm a pretty organized person, and stuff gets messy fast. So try to make sure you're organized. Be ready to take notes so you can learn, or if you got a massive, huge GigaChad brain, just remember everything you do. I take notes. So that is important for learning and growing as a modder. So step one is we're going to install the mod editor, right? So to do that, we have to navigate to the proper directory where we need to move the files for the mod editor, right? So go to Steam in your program files, Steam Apps, Common, Space Marine 2. This is your game folder, okay? But this isn't necessarily where we're going to be doing all our work. Go a little deeper for that. Client PC, root. This is our home, right? For Space Marine 2 modding. This is where we want to be. So we're going to go into the mod editor folder and move all that stuff over here. Give it a second. Okay. And so we added a few things, right? Tools, mod editor, this is where we find the actual program we're going to be using. Okay. And that program will be accessing files in the mods source folder. This is where everything that you actually want to edit with the mod editor needs to go. Okay. I want to say before we go any further, a few other things you'll need is WinRAR or some other similar program and Notepad++. Okay, those are programs that are free, easy to find online, but you will need both of them for this process as well. So make sure you grab those. So let's continue with the installation of the mod editor. We now need to fill it with game files, right? So we can do that from two separate files that we need to move stuff over. So we can go to packs, client, default other.pack, and we want to move everything that's in here into the mod sources folder. Okay. You can do this however you choose. I like to use the actual extract button to make sure it moves over cleanly. Right. And while that's going, we can move over to the other one we'll need to grab, which is actually back in our game folder in server PC, root, packs, server, default. We will need this default other pack as well. This is for server-side files. So client-side files that we just did from here are the ones that are loaded on your end. But we can also edit stuff that is loaded from the game's end, which can actually server-side files can actually impact stuff that console players and stuff like folks like that are affected by as well. So it's very worth it to grab these also and put them where they belong. We are moving them to the mods source folder as well. This is going to ask if you want to replace things. Yes, you do. Okay. And now, if all you're trying to do is make a mod that goes on top of the base game, you're ready to start. Okay? However, as some of you who've been around here probably know, this community is very centered around a single mod called Astartes, right? Realistically, if you're wanting your mod to be used by a lot of people, then you will need to make it compatible with Astartes, right? I'm going to show you how to do that from the get-go, okay? So you'll obviously need whatever version of Astartes is the new one, right? So currently that is 9.0, okay? To go along with the Space Marine 9.0 version, right? So what you need to do is this. You can open up, and this works not just with Astartes. This works with any mod. Like, for example, if you wanted to make sure your mod was compatible with a random one and the base game, you'd slap the base game in and then the next one, right? Order is important, okay? So, for example, if there's a mod that edits Astartes, right, and you want to make sure your edit's on top of that, you would do what I'm about to do, then do it again with that mod, and then make your mod on top, okay? This is just how to do compatibility the easy way, okay? So I here have Astartes 9.0, right? I want to make sure that my mod is using Astartes as a base, is going to be compatible with Astartes, right? So what I need to do is I need to do the same thing I just did with the base game, except using Astartes files. That way, when I'm making my edits, what I'm actually editing is the base files, not of the base game, but of Astartes itself. Right? Yes to all again. We want to replace. Give that a second. Alrighty. We have now created a proper compatible file base to start making our mod. Okay? So, next I'm going to talk a little bit about just finding stuff. Right here, you'll see. Hold on. So let me go into the beginner bundle. Actually, here, you want to open the Integration Studio from here, which is what the mod editor is called, Integration Studio. You want to run it as an administrator if you can. You don't always need to, but why not? Makes things a little smoother usually. This is our integration studio. Ignore that. That was open before when I had it open before. So when you open it, it should look like this. Except it might not have a recents. Okay? In here, this shows your mod source. This is what we just made. This whole file base that you can now play with, right? But, oh my gosh, this is so much stuff. I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know how to find what I'm looking for, right? So, there's a few things you can do to find things. One is in Integration Studio, and the other is actually using Notepad++. If you want to just find a file as a whole, I would recommend using Integration Studio. Okay? If you want to find something or examples of things inside of files, Notepad++ is the way to go. Okay? So first I'll show you the basics of Integration Studio. Here is your preferences. I recommend setting your autosave to something massive because saving is a bit clunky. It takes a second and it will throw you off. So it's better to change that. You can change all this stuff if you want. I like to leave mine default. So let's say today we're going to make our Ultramarine champion into, actually let's do not, let's make our regular heavies into a Primarch size, right, character. Okay, that's what we're going to do. So you might be like, oh, how do I find it, right? So all you'd have to do is, first of all, you try to think through a little bit. Characters, right? That makes sense, right? Player, Marine, outfits. Now here's the problem, right? This is simple for those of us who've done this before, but you might not, right? Let's say this was all closed up tight and you wanted to edit the sniper, right? Sniper. Boom. Now it shows you everything with sniper in the file name, right? But I encourage you to explore. This search will allow dirty search, which essentially means, let's say I want to do something to the sniper champion. Sniper champion. I can just type sniper champion. Even though it has a space and there's no spaces in here, it will just pull up every file that has sniper and champion, right? So now it has all the files right here that are snipers and champions, right? So you don't have to type things exactly to be able to find them with the search. You just be able to have to type something close, right? A few key things to search. The word library. Almost everything that has a ton of editable stuff, perks, masteries, customization, a lot of that major stuff is held in things that have the word library in them. So that's something you can look into. Today, we are simply going to be making our heavy characters bigger. So, heavies are called support in this. So you'd find that out by going to outfits and then support. So this is what we're going to be editing today. We obviously have the champion versions, which we're not trying to edit the champions. We're trying to edit the regular ones for PvE. So we're going to open authority and client. So for most files that are CLSs, you'll have an authority, a client, and a server. These mean different things for different file types, but in general, authority files means it is focused on the player. And not all players, specifically the player who's actively playing that version of the game, right? So for client is everyone else, or all externally of the active player. Server is things that are true on the server side of everybody, right? So for example, if I wanted to make other people look bigger when they were playing heavy class, I would have to change the client. But that wouldn't change how I looked when I was playing support, right? If we want to do that, we'd need authority file. So for example, if you want changes to be consistent, if you want everyone who uses your mod to see the same thing, you need to change it in authority and a client, for example. Okay? So, now is where I'm going to get into why you need Notepad++, and why you need Integration Studio, why you need both of them, and why it's so good to use them together rather than only one or the other. Okay. Um, I also have Notepad++ in. Oh, I don't. I don't have it in the beginner bundle. You can find it. It's online. It's easy to find. But so I'm going to show you something. Which is some stuff about Notepad++. Okay, that's really helpful for modding. And then we'll get back to editing the actual Integration Studio folder in a second. So something you can do is you can open a folder as a workspace. Okay? What you frequently want to do is select your mod sources folder when you do that. This will bring up essentially an internal folder inside of Notepad++ that has all the stuff you want, right? So instead of having to go through every file individually, you can now search all the files in your workspace, right? So let's say I wanted to find champion, everything that has to do with champions in the entirety of the moddable game, right? What you could do is type champion, find in files, and now it's searching through every file, right? Looking for the word champion. And it'll pop up with a little bracket on the bottom that shows you all the examples and the lines that have that instance of what you typed in it. So that's another way to search that's super useful. Let's say you found something that has the word support. You found out that heavies are called supports, and so now you want to find out, oh, what files have that character listed in them. So instead, you can now find in files for the word support, and now you will be able to find out every file and every instance of a file that interacts with that thing you're trying to work with, right? So that is how you search with Notepad++. Okay? The reason these two tools are so good together is not because both of them do everything, but because they shore up each other's weaknesses, right? I'm going to give you an example. So this is the PvE support authority file that we're looking at in the mod editor, right? You can open this in Notepad++. You fully can, right? It's very possible. This is how people did modding at all times until we had this program. So you might notice some things, right? It looks very different, but more importantly, look how short it is in Notepad++. Look how much stuff we have in here that if you're only using Notepad, you would never even know that most of this stuff existed, and you wouldn't even know that the options of changes you could make were even there, right? The downside of, so you might be asking, why would I not just use the mod editor all the time? It's because it's slow, right? It takes a lot of time. It can be inconvenient. When you save, when you make a change, when you try to open a lot of tabs at once, it gets bogged down. And it can be hard. It's not efficient. It's efficient for knowledge, but not efficient for actually making the changes. So for example, what we're doing today is we're going to make it bigger, right? So let's say, oh, we found the geometry, the physical geometry for this character, right? Here's the scale. That probably makes them bigger or smaller, determines their size. That's pretty self-explanatory. Let's make a change, right? I always recommend when experimenting to do big changes, right? And big means different things for different files, right? Some things, adding 9 might do nothing, right? Other stuff, adding 9 might be huge. So just go big first and figure out the precision later after you figure out what everything does that you're trying to do, okay? So, but for example, right now, look at all this stuff. This is this right here, geom, in the Notepad is all of this. So there's just tons of stuff that we can actually edit and mess around with that if we were just looking at Notepad, we would have no clue, right? And because the way the Notepad files work is they only apply changes based on what the game assumes is the default, right? So all this stuff is stuff that's different about this file than other characters, right? So, but let's do this. When you're experimenting, you want to do it in Integration Studio, not in Notepad. Don't experiment and explore in Notepad. You're wasting your time. Use it to find what you're looking for and then explore and experiment with that thing in Integration Studio. Use Notepad for efficiency, for making changes quickly and effectively that you already know how they work and what they do and what's going to happen, right? So we're going to save this. We increase the scale by 9, up to 10. Okay, so see how that took a second. And that was for a very minor change of a single folder, right? Of a single modifiable variable, right? So let's close this. So what that actually does is it changes the text document in Notepad, right? So if we reopen this now, it shows scale 10. So now we know that that's where that goes if that change is made, right? It also, Integration Studio also makes resources, which are something that are, trust Integration Studio to do it. It does it fine. And that is used by the game for linking files together so it can find them. Okay? So, we made a change to a file. How do we test it? Right? How do we put it in game to see what happens? So the way you do that is by using your local folder. So that is going to be this folder here in your root of your game files, right? Of your client PC of Space Marine 2 local folder. Okay? Something very important about your local folder and how you use it is you need the full file path. Okay? So all of this little stuff up here, SSL characters from the inside of your mod source folder, we need to recreate that, right? There's other ways to do this faster. I'm going to show you how to do it the simple, straightforward way that doesn't need anything else. All right, so I'm looking over here at the file path, and I'm creating that file path inside of my local folder. Making a new folder, making the proper folders in the proper places. Something I will recommend, it's more helpful for huge mods that change a lot of stuff, but Violet released a Python script that automatically copies everything from your mod sources folder into your local folder. Very useful. I've been getting a lot of use out of that. But again, it's more useful the bigger your mod is. Okay, outfits, and one more. Support. Okay, boom. Now we have the same file path, which means we can move these over to here. Okay? So the local folder, the way it works is the game counts the local folder as a mod that goes above all other mods, right? So for example, we made a change to a file, we want Astartes compatibility. Okay? So that means when we do our testing, we got to make sure we're using Astartes also, right? Because Astartes is what we're trying to make sure we're compatible with in this example, right? So let's bring Astartes back into our mods folder. There, if you have the Warhammer Workshop mod loader, just make sure that it's active and the ones that you don't want aren't active. Okay? I use that too, but I'm not using it for this tutorial. And then we can boot up the game. Fascinating. Okay. So, so, if you've modded this game before, you might have seen what I did wrong. If you haven't, now would be a good time for me to explain it. So, in your mods folder, in the mods folder, I had put just the zip, the downloaded file of Astartes. That doesn't work. In your mods folder, you need only to have .pack folder files. Anything else other than the README and .packs and potentially a config file if you're doing crazy stuff will not work. It'll mess up your stuff, as you all saw before. But let's go and see if our change worked. Okay. Let's see if our supports are bigger. Remember, we changed it to 10. Oh my. Yeah, I'd say they're bigger. Maybe a little bit too big, huh? Maybe it's about Titan sized at 10. Hell yeah. Okay, well, now we know that that's too big, right? So now what we can do is we can take a note or whatever, scale times 10, way too big, whatever. However you want to record it. Just make sure you remember what happened and what you did to make it happen, right? Because let's say you wanted to make something huge in the future, then you'd know how, right? So now you're going to do that a bunch of times. The process of editing the file, putting it in local, and testing it a ton of times over and over and over again. That is what modding looks like. Until you find the specific size you want, right? So for our video today, I already know what the size is because I made a mod that does something similar. We are looking for a Primarch sized. So we're going to go 1.4 today. Okay? Now, we can do that in Mod Editor, but as I said, takes longer to do things that you know how to do in Mod Editor than it does in Notepad. So let's actually make that change in Notepad. Open up our file that has what we want. Let's do 1.4. Save. Immediately done. Immediately changed. Now, what we can actually do as well, that would be even faster than what we just did, is we can just edit it when it's already in the local folder if we already know what we're doing, right? Be careful with this, though, because if you mess up too much stuff with this, it'll mess up your resource. But for something like this, it's fine. Boom. There we go. Now let's launch the game again. Whoops. All right. Here we have it. 1.4 scaling. All right. Boom. That's what we wanted. We're Primarch size now. Excellent. Okay. So, now that we have the changes that we want set up to the variables, the numbers, it's all what we want in our local folder. Okay? Now, there's only one more thing we need to do. Okay? And that is pack it up. Make it in a format that we can share with other people or use ourselves easily. Right? And so for that, we're going to use whatever our zipping program is. I recommend, and I personally use WinRAR for that. Okay? But you can use whatever you want. The process might be a little different, but if you're not using WinRAR, but this is what we have to do, right? So now we need to make a .pack file, okay? Because that's the file that the game uses for mods. So we're going to create an archive. If we're using WinRAR, this is very important. Switch it to zip and switch it to store. This will make sure it stores all of the data properly, okay? And then you can call your mod whatever you want up here as long as it ends with .pack. Let's say Primarch heavy .pack. Something to remember is when the game reads the mods folder, it reads it alphabetically, right? So if you, for whatever reason, need your mod to load earlier than everyone else's, then you know, it goes alphabetically, right? The ones that load first will be the ones that are first alphabetically, whether that be numbers or letters or whatever you want to do. So for us, we're just going to leave it as Primark Heavy for now. And then you can zip it up, Primark Heavy.pack. Now you have your mod. This is your .pack folder. You can move that over to the mods folder or install it using the Space Marine mod loader. Now, you should always do a final test of the .pack before you post to Nexus or before you share or whatever. So let's put this somewhere, right? Put this somewhere. It doesn't matter where. We have it in the mod sources folder. Okay, but we want to remove it from local to make sure that whatever happens is only coming from our .packs. All right. I'm gonna boot up the game. Have another little time skip, and then we'll show the results of the test. Giant, big. All right, we have successfully made a mod that makes the active player, when they play heavy, to be Primarch sized. Congrats. Thank you for your help. And you're welcome for mine. And I'm excited to see what you make, each and every one of you. But yeah, thank you all so much for being here. And I wish you much luck and power on your modding journey. Thank you so much to everyone, and I love you all, and goodbye!